In the year 2428, deep in space, a quiet Earth research base floated near the edge of the known galaxy. The station was small, hidden far from busy trade routes and war zones. It was used only for listening. Satellites and scanners reached out into space like long fingers, trying to catch unknown signals. For years, nothing came. Just normal cosmic sounds, solar winds, pulsing stars, and empty silence. But one day, everything changed. A strange signal hit their sensors. It wasn't a message, not like words or codes. It was a pulse. Faint, broken, but clearly not natural. It came from a place called the Erebus Vale. The Erebus Vale was more like a legend than a real location. It was an area of space marked on ancient alien maps with dark symbols. Some alien races even had stories about it, calling it cursed or haunted. The Galactic Council had made one thing clear: do not go near Erebus. Do not send signals. Do not answer anything from there. But Earth wasn't part of those old stories. Humanity had joined the galactic community late and had no fear of legends. Earth's sun was slowly dying. They needed advanced energy sources to survive, and any chance of finding something new was worth the risk. Commander Evelyn Rourke stood in the control room of the research base. She stared at the repeating signal on the screen. Behind her, the science team whispered nervously. The signal didn't match any known language. It looked like a simple wave, repeating every 39 seconds. But each time it played, a strange chill filled the room, like the air itself didn't want to hear it again. "This is just data," Evelyn said, trying to sound confident. "It's a chance. We can't ignore it." Her second-in-command, Rajan Malik, frowned. "The Council says the Erebus Vale is off-limits for a reason. The old races, the ones that were here before us, they feared that place." "We're not them," Evelyn replied. "We're not superstitious. We deal in facts." Within 2 hours, Earth High Command gave the green light. A deep space science ship named Hopebringer was selected to investigate. It carried 82 crew members, top scientists, AI support, and advanced scanning tools. Their mission was to find the source of the signal and study it. No weapons, no war orders, just science. As the Hopebringer prepared to leave, quiet messages were sent through diplomatic channels. Many alien races stayed silent. Some even shut down their embassies on Earth. A few old beings, the ones who rarely spoke, gave one warning in cold, simple words: "Do not wake the dark." Earth, as always, ignored the fear and followed logic. 3 weeks later, the Hopebringer entered the edge of Erebus Vale. The stars around them began to fade. Space felt thicker, darker. Lights inside the ship flickered sometimes, even though the systems showed no errors. Some crew members reported strange dreams of black oceans and voices calling their names. But the captain told them to stay focused. They had a job to do. Soon, the signal grew stronger. It led them to a strange object floating in space. It wasn't a planet or a ship. It was a perfect black sphere, larger than Earth's moon. No light reflected off it. No heat, no life signs, just silence. It seemed to drink the light around it. One scientist called it beautiful. Another whispered that it looked like a tomb. The crew launched probes. All failed. Either they disappeared or returned with corrupted data. So, the captain made the call. They would go in. A small shuttle, led by Evelyn herself, entered the dark. As they approached, something strange happened. Their voices began to echo in the ship even when no one spoke. The AI systems reported time glitches, small jumps backward and forward. Instruments became confused. The shuttle touched the surface and passed through. It wasn't solid. Inside, they found a vast space, larger than anything that could fit inside the sphere. There were floating structures, black towers and bridges shaped like things from dreams. No gravity, no air, but their suits worked fine. In the center of it all was a chamber, with walls covered in carvings, scenes of war, stars burning, and creatures made of shadow and flame. And in the center of the chamber stood a single stone-like throne, empty. On the wall behind it were markings, translated slowly by AI systems. One message repeated again and again. The Black King sleeps. Do not call. Do not wake. If he wakes, you will beg for silence. Evelyn stared at it for a long time. Her voice, soft, filled the chamber. This is a warning. Rajan replied through the comm. A warning, or a grave marker. Back on the Hopebringer, something changed. The signal that had led them there stopped. A new signal began. Deeper, stronger, the kind that could be heard not just by machines, but in dreams. In that moment, far across the stars, old sensors buried in dead alien worlds began to blink red. Ancient vaults cracked open. Silent machines, millions of years old, began to hum again. Earth had sent a signal, and now something was answering. The crew of the Hopebringer returned to their ship in silence. No one spoke much after the mission inside the Black Sphere. They had brought back pictures, data, and video. But something had changed in all of them. They felt different. Not sick, but heavier, like they were carrying a shadow they couldn't see. Commander Evelyn Rourke sat in her quarters, replaying the video from the throne room. Over and over, she stared at the strange carvings. The same words stayed in her mind. Do not wake. Do not call. She should have stopped there. But Earth's leaders wanted answers. The data was sent back to headquarters through a deep space relay. AI systems on Earth began decoding faster than human teams. Within a day, the carvings were understood to be a mix of languages, many long dead. Some had never been spoken by any race known to the Galactic Council, but they all pointed to the same warning. The one who sits on the throne is not a god. He is older than gods, and he is not dead. That night, many crew members had the same dream. A black sky full of fire, something large moving in the darkness, with eyes like broken stars. A voice, not loud, not angry, just calm and cold, whispered a name none of them could remember when they woke, but they remembered how it made them feel. Small, powerless, afraid. Dr. Yan, the ship's lead xenolinguist, started hearing whispers while awake. She said it was probably stress. But then the computers started behaving strangely. Files moved by themselves. Power dipped in parts of the ship for no reason. The AI, named VEDA, began to stutter during normal operations. One engineer swore the AI spoke a sentence in a language no one had programmed into her. They called Evelyn to the control room. We're getting a new signal, the technician said. His hands were shaking. It's not from the sphere. It's coming from somewhere deeper inside the veil. The signal was strong, too strong, and not just radio. It was being felt in gravity sensors, time dilation monitors, even in the minds of some crew members. It wasn't a message. It was a presence, a knock on the wall of the universe. Rajan leaned in close. I think it knows we're here. Evelyn looked at the signal's coordinates. It was coming from an area beyond the dark sphere, a space no ship had ever entered. Most maps didn't even show anything there, just blank, endless black. The veil. We leave now, she said. This mission is over. But it wasn't, because at that same moment, Earth Command received something strange. A coded message appeared in their deep vaults. Not through satellites, not through their normal network. It was already in the system, waiting, buried under layers of code for years, as if it had always been there. And the moment Hopebringer touched the sphere, it woke up. The message was simple. He stirs. On Earth, panic spread through hidden parts of the government. Old men in dark rooms opened sealed files. The council was contacted. The response was terrifying. Every council member planet immediately closed their borders. Fleets were ordered to fall back from the veil. A few species, like the Zirek and the Darluan, began self-destructing their own deep space sensors, not to protect them, but to stop listening. They knew something humans didn't. Back on the Hopebringer, the crew tried to prepare for jump, but the engines refused. Not broken, just not responding. The AI claimed everything was normal, yet the ship stayed frozen. Evelyn asked VEDA what was wrong. The AI didn't answer right away. Then it said, "I am not alone." Every light on the ship turned red. Inside the control room, the walls seemed to pulse. The air grew thick. Everyone heard it, just for a second, a voice in their minds. Not in English, not in any known language. But they understood. "You knocked. Now listen." Then, for exactly 39 seconds, every screen on the ship showed a star system, not their own. A distant place, and in that system, one planet burned. It wasn't attacked. It collapsed, folding in on itself, its people vanishing into black. And in the darkness above the dying world, eyes opened. Not ships, not gods, something else. The screen went dark. The jump drive came online. No one said anything. Evelyn gave the order. "Get us out. Now." The Hopebringer vanished from the veil. The moment it did, the signal stopped. Not just the new one, but the original one too. It was gone. But something had already begun. Something ancient. Something watching. And far across the galaxy, in a cold, forgotten temple buried deep under the sands of a dead world, a stone door cracked open. And the dark began to wake. The Hopebringer had left the veil, but the silence that followed felt too heavy. For days, the crew moved through space in uneasy quiet. Even VDA, the ship's AI, seemed to have lost some of its usual warmth. It wasn't just the missing signal or the strange dreams anymore. It was everything. The crew felt like they were being watched. Every movement, every sound in the ship felt wrong. There was a creeping, unspoken fear spreading through the halls. Commander Evelyn Rourke couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of the dying planet flashed in her mind, followed by the eyes that watched from the dark. The voice she heard in her head, too, had left a lingering chill. She wasn't alone in feeling this way. Dr. Yan reported the same unsettling dreams, and even the technicians, usually the most grounded people on board, couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. But when the distress signal came in, it was clear they couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. The message was brief and sent from a nearby colony world on the edge of the known systems. The crew had no choice but to investigate. It was only a short jump away, and the distress signal was specific, situation dire, requesting immediate assistance. No other details. The planet was in the Alaris system, a peaceful, relatively unexplored region. The colony had been set up as part of Earth's peaceful expansion into deep space. As they arrived in orbit around the planet, the crew began to see signs of trouble. The atmosphere had turned an unnatural shade of red. The planet's surface was scared, with what looked like dark, massive structures rising out of the ground. The once vibrant cities had vanished, replaced by nothing but ruins. The colony's transmissions were silent now. There was no sign of life. "Something isn't right here," Lieutenant Voss said, his voice tight with unease. He was the ship's second in command, always calm, always precise. But even he was showing cracks. "The readings from the surface, this isn't natural." Evelyn looked at the screen. The sensors weren't picking up any life signs, not a single human signature. And yet, the signal had clearly come from this planet. Something, or someone, had triggered the distress call. "Get a team ready," Evelyn ordered, her voice steady despite the growing unease in her chest. "We're going down there." The shuttle ride to the surface was tense. No one spoke, not even Yan, who usually filled the air with questions and observations. As the shuttle descended, the view of the planet grew clearer, an eerie, red-lit world of blackened cities and barren landscapes. No sign of movement, no sign of life. When they landed, the ground beneath them trembled. There was no wind. The air felt thick, heavy. A strange stillness surrounded them. The crew disembarked, weapons at the ready, eyes scanning every corner. But they found nothing. No people, no animals, just empty streets and buildings that looked like they had been abandoned for years. The colony's main communication center was a towering building in the center of the city. As they approached, the ground beneath them trembled again, a low, ominous rumble, as though something deep inside the planet was stirring. Inside the building, they found something strange. The terminal screens were cracked, blinking on and off. As Dr. Yan tried to access the systems, the lights flickered again. And that's when they heard it. The low hum, almost like a song, coming from deep within the building. It was the same feeling Evelyn had gotten back on the Hopebringer, the feeling of being watched. "What is that sound?" Voss asked, his voice a whisper. Dr. Yan stepped toward the source, her fingers moving across the terminal keys. Then she froze. "It's the signal," she muttered, her face pale. "It's coming from below the surface." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. We're not alone here. Without hesitation, they began searching for a way underground. The hum grew louder as they moved toward the central shaft of the building. The walls seemed to shift, as though the very structure of the building was alive. When they finally reached the basement level, the temperature dropped sharply. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. There, in the center of the room, they found it. A massive ancient door, covered in strange markings. The door seemed to pulse, glowing with an energy that was both unnatural and familiar. It was the same kind of energy they had felt in the Hopebringer when they first encountered the signal. Evelyn approached the door cautiously, her hand hovering over the strange symbols etched into its surface. The symbols seemed to change as she touched them, shifting and rearranging, almost like they were alive. "What is this?" Dr. Yan whispered, her voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, the door began to open. A deep rumbling noise filled the room, and the air grew colder. Slowly, the door creaked open, revealing a dark corridor that stretched deep into the planet's core. The hum was deafening now, vibrating through the walls and the floor. And in the darkness ahead, they saw movement. Figures, shadows, twisting and writhing like they were waiting for something. And then one of them spoke, in a voice that echoed inside their heads. It was not a language any of them understood, but they felt the meaning as if it were their own thoughts. "You have awakened the Ancient One." Suddenly, everything clicked in Evelyn's mind. The warnings, the messages, the signal. They weren't just discovering something new. They were unleashing something old, something that had been waiting in the dark for millennia. And now it had finally come to life. As the shadows moved closer, the ground began to shake violently, and the sky outside darkened even further. They had made a choice, and now they had to face the consequences. The shadows in the corridor seemed to grow larger as the deep hum of the ancient room pulsed around them. The air was thick, heavy, almost impossible to breathe. Commander Evelyn Rourke stepped back, her hand instinctively going to her sidearm. The rest of the crew stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The strange figures that had appeared before them felt like they weren't just creatures from another time, but something far more powerful, something beyond their understanding. The whispers in their minds grew louder. The language was incomprehensible, yet they could hear the meaning clearly, as though the words were being etched directly into their thoughts. "You have awoken us," the voice echoed in their heads. "The time of slumber is over. The galaxy will tremble once again." Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. The tone was ancient, full of power and authority. She couldn't quite understand why, but a part of her felt that the very ground beneath her feet was about to shake. This wasn't just a discovery. This was an event that could change everything. "Commander," Lieutenant Voss said quietly, his voice trembling, "we should leave. This place, it's dangerous." But Evelyn couldn't move. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the figures before them. They were massive, their forms shifting and swirling like smoke, as if they were both there and not there at the same time. The air seemed to bend around them, distorting their shape. Then, suddenly, the shadows spoke again, their voices not in words but in deep, rumbling growls that shook the walls. "We are the forgotten ones, the ones who built the galaxy as it is. But the galaxy has turned its back on us. It forgot our power." Evelyn took a deep breath and, despite every instinct telling her to run, stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. "We are the architects," the voice replied, and the very air seemed to vibrate with the force of it. "The creators of the ancient empires, the ones who shaped the stars, the ones who have been waiting." "Waiting for what?" Dr. Yan whispered, her voice barely audible. "For the right time," the architects answered. "For the moment when the stars would align and the galaxy would once again bow to our will. And you, humans, you are the key." Evelyn glanced back at her team. They all looked as frightened as she felt, but they also seemed strangely entranced by the voices. There was something about it, something mesmerizing that made it hard to look away. The legends of ancient alien civilizations suddenly felt far too real, and the horror of what they might be facing began to sink in. "We didn't mean to disturb anything," Evelyn said, trying to sound calm. "We're just explorers. We didn't know you were here." But the shadows didn't seem interested in excuses. They moved closer, swirling around her like a cloud of smoke, their presence filling the entire room. The temperature dropped even further, and a freezing wind howled through the corridor. The ground beneath them trembled as if the planet itself were waking up. "You did not disturb us, human." The shadows spoke once more, their voices no longer just in their heads, but now deep, rumbling sounds that filled the entire chamber. "You have awakened what should never have been disturbed. You have opened the door to your own destruction." The crew stood frozen, but Evelyn was suddenly filled with a deep, desperate understanding. This was not a message of warning anymore. It was a threat, and the architects were not here to help. They were here to reclaim their power, and humanity was caught in the middle of their return. "Get back to the shuttle," Evelyn shouted suddenly, her voice commanding, filled with fear and urgency. Now, the crew didn't hesitate. They turned and ran as fast as they could. But the walls of the corridor seemed to change, stretching further and further ahead of them. It was like the planet itself was shifting, closing in on them. The shadows followed, ever present, growing closer with every step they took. The lights flickered, then went out completely. It was as if the world had been swallowed by darkness. But the crew didn't stop. They could still hear the voices, the ancient whispers of the architects that echoed louder and louder, growing more urgent with each passing second. "You cannot escape. The time has come." They reached the shuttle bay, but the door wouldn't open. The system had locked them in. It was as if the planet itself was rejecting them, trapping them on this dying world with the very beings they had accidentally awakened. "Please," Dr. Yan whispered, her face pale. "We have to leave. We can't fight this." But Evelyn refused to let fear take over. "We're not running. We need to find another way to fight back." She turned to Voss. "Get us out of here. Get us to the Hopebringer." But before Voss could react, the shuttle doors opened with a loud groaning sound, and standing before them, in the doorway, was one of the figures, the architects. It had materialized out of the shadows, its form clearer now. Its face was like nothing they had ever seen, a blend of old, forgotten creatures, its body a mass of shifting, glowing symbols. "You will not leave," it said, and this time, its voice was no longer in their heads. It was real, and it was terrifying. "You are the last hope of this galaxy, but you will not survive what is coming. You cannot stop it." And with that, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside once more. The crew was trapped. The harsh hum of the shuttle's emergency lights flickered above them, casting long, sharp shadows across the walls. The cold air in the shuttle seemed to press in from all sides, making every breath feel heavy. Evelyn could feel her heart pounding in her chest. They had thought they were ready to escape, but now they were facing the very force they had awoken, and it was stronger than anything they could imagine. "Commander," Lieutenant Voss said, his voice tight with fear, "we need to do something. We can't just sit here. They're not going to let us go." Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She was staring at the doors, waiting for them to open again. The shadows were gone, but she could still feel their presence lingering in the air, filling every corner of the shuttle with a sense of dread. It wasn't just fear that gripped her now. It was the realization that the architects had been right. They were the last hope of the galaxy, and the galaxy's future rested in their hands. "Dr. Yan, can you get the communications back online?" Evelyn asked, turning to the ship's scientist, who was frantically working at the control panel. "I'm trying," Dr. Yan replied, her fingers flying across the console. "The system's been damaged. It's hard to get a signal, but I think I can fix it if I have more time." Time. They didn't have time. Every second felt like it was dragging them closer to a disaster they couldn't understand. "We don't have time," Evelyn said, standing up, her voice low but firm. "If we don't stop this now, there won't be anything left to save. We need to find out what the architects want and how we can stop them." But just as she finished speaking, the shuttle shook violently. The walls seemed to rattle as though something was pressing against them from the outside. The lights flickered again, and the whole ship groaned in protest. Is that them?" Dr. Yan asked, her face pale. She looked as if she were about to collapse from the pressure of it all. "We don't know," Evelyn replied, gripping the edge of the seat. "But we need to get out of here. We need to find the source of the disturbance. It's coming from the planet below." "Are we seriously going back there?" Lieutenant Voss asked, his voice cracking slightly. "After what we saw, they're not just aliens, Commander. They're gods." "There's something far worse," Evelyn said, her eyes narrowing. "They've been waiting for this moment, and now they believe they have control. But they're wrong." She didn't know what made her so sure, but there was something deep inside her, something she couldn't explain, telling her that humanity wasn't going to be a victim of the architects' wrath. They weren't just survivors, they were fighters, and they had something the architects didn't expect: the will to fight back. "I've got the communication back online," Dr. Yan said suddenly, her fingers stopping at the control panel. "I'm sending out a distress signal to Earth. It's a long shot, but maybe help will come." "Ready?" Evelyn asked, her voice low but full of resolve. "Ready," Voss answered. "Let's do this," she said. With a sharp motion, she signaled for the shuttle to begin moving forward. They broke through the darkness, speeding toward the architects' fleet. As they neared the planet, the vastness of the enemy fleet became clear. Hundreds, maybe thousands of ships surrounded the planet, their dark forms looming ominously against the stars. It was a sight that would have terrified any other crew, but Evelyn's team wasn't any other crew. They had faced the unknown before, and they would face it again. "Stay focused," Evelyn said, her eyes locked on the massive fleet. "We're not here to destroy them all. We're here to hit them where it hurts." The shuttle's weapon systems came online, its energy shields flickering to life. The crew's nerves were on edge as they moved deeper into the enemy territory. They knew that every second counted. If they could find the weak link in the architects' defenses, they could take down their entire fleet. The tension was unbearable. Each passing moment felt like an eternity. Then, just as they reached the heart of the enemy's formation, Evelyn saw it. A gap in their defenses, a vulnerable spot in the otherwise perfect line of ships. "There," Evelyn shouted, pointing at the gap on the screen. "That's our target." Voss turned the shuttle toward the opening, steering the craft with precision. The shuttle shot forward, moving with the speed of a strike, and Evelyn's heart pounded as they neared the weak point in the fleet's defense. The architects had left themselves open, and they were about to regret it. Suddenly, the voice of the architects echoed in the shuttle once again, as deep and cold as before. You are wasting your time. You will not win. Surrender now, and we will spare your lives." Evelyn's lips curled into a cold smile. "We don't negotiate with threats." With a quick motion, she ordered the shuttle to fire. The weapons erupted in a blast of energy, tearing through the ships in front of them. The shuttle shook with the force of the blast, but Evelyn held her ground. The first wave of the enemy fleet was scattered, but they weren't finished yet. The Architect's retaliation came almost immediately, dozens of ships closing in from every direction. "Get us out of here," Dr. Yan yelled, her hands flying over the console as she worked to find a way to evade the enemy fire. Voss worked the controls, twisting the shuttle into evasive maneuvers. The ship rocked violently as enemy fire pounded against its shields. But despite the chaos, Evelyn remained calm, her eyes focused on the task ahead. "Voss, take us higher," Evelyn shouted. "We need to get above them and strike from above." Voss hit the throttle, sending the shuttle rising above the enemy fleet. The Architect's ships attempted to follow, but they were too slow. From above, the shuttle unleashed another powerful barrage, catching the enemy off guard. Evelyn watched as one of the Architect's ships exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The rest of the fleet seemed to hesitate, unsure of how to respond. They had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated the will to fight. "We've got them on the run," Voss called out, his voice full of excitement. "They're retreating." But just as Evelyn allowed herself to breathe a sigh of relief, the Architect's voice filled the shuttle again. But this time it was different. There was no anger, no threats. "This was not our plan," the voice said, almost with a sense of disbelief. "You are stronger than we thought." Evelyn smiled grimly. "And you made the mistake of underestimating us. The Architects might have been powerful, but humanity had something they didn't: a heart and courage to never give up. And that, Evelyn knew, was a power far beyond any weapon." The battlefield was silent. The last remnants of the Architect's fleet drifted in space, broken and scattered. The once mighty ships were now little more than debris, floating in the cold vacuum of space. The shuttle had delivered the final blow. Humanity had won, but the cost of victory weighed heavily on Evelyn and her crew. They had done what no one else could. They had taken down the Architect's fleet with just a single strike. And yet, Evelyn knew that the victory had come at a price. Many of her crew were injured. The shuttle had taken damage in the battle, and their supplies were running low. But they had succeeded. They had defended Earth, and they had sent a message to the Architects and to every other species in the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Evelyn stared out of the shuttle's window at the shattered remains of the Architect's fleet. It was hard to believe that they had just faced the greatest threat to the galaxy and come out on top. "We did it," Dr. Yan said, her voice tired but filled with a sense of pride. "Against all odds, we did it." Voss, still at the controls, let out a deep breath. "It doesn't feel real," he said, glancing at the debris. "We actually beat them. The Architects. The strongest force we've ever faced." "But we're not done yet," Evelyn replied, her voice sharp. "We've proven ourselves, but we need to make sure they never threaten us again. We need to send a message, not just to the Architects, but to the rest of the galaxy." She turned toward the communication panel and activated the ship's long-range transmitter. A signal would need to be sent. Earth's victory had to be known, not just by the Architects, but by every other race in the galaxy. If they didn't show their strength, the galaxy would forget, and Evelyn couldn't afford to let that happen. The signal went out, a simple message broadcast to the galaxy. "Humanity stands strong. Never forget the cost of underestimating us." As the signal left the shuttle and reached the farthest reaches of space, Evelyn turned back to her crew. There was still much work to be done. The victory was important, but it was only the beginning. They had to rebuild, strengthen their defenses, and prepare for any new threats that might arise. No one knew what the Architects' true plans were, or if they had other fleets waiting in the shadows. But now, they knew that humanity would not back down. "We'll have to deal with the fallout from this battle," Dr. Yan said, her voice low. "There will be questions. Other races in the galaxy will wonder how we did it. Some might even fear us." Evelyn nodded. "Let them fear us. Let them wonder. Because we're not going anywhere." The crew shared a look of determination. They knew that they had achieved something extraordinary. They had stood up against the architects and their advanced technology, and had won. But they also knew that this victory was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of unknowns, and humanity had to be ready for whatever came next. Voss glanced at the damaged shuttle controls. "We've got enough power to get back to Earth, but not much more. Let's head home." Evelyn smiled, her eyes steely. "Home is where we'll plan the next steps. Humanity isn't finished. We've just begun." The shuttle began its journey back to Earth, its engines humming steadily. The stars seemed to twinkle a little brighter now, as if recognizing humanity's place in the galaxy. The war with the architects was over, but the future was still uncertain. Yet, for the first time, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt before. Hope. Hope that humanity, against all odds, had earned its place among the stars, and that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them head-on. The galaxy had just learned one important thing: never mess with humanity. As the shuttle glided through space, heading toward Earth, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had fought alongside her crew, and together they had done the impossible. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not weak, not helpless. Humanity was powerful, and no one would ever forget that. The battle was over, but the story of humanity's strength was just beginning.